Turducken, a chicken and a duck and a turkey. Beautiful. How fun is that? Seems like an amazing idea, but in reality, a lot of the time, it is not an amazing meal. If you've ever had one of those store-bought turduckens that you've had to cook yourself, you've undoubtedly found that in order to get that inner chicken layer up to that 145 Fahrenheit for food safety, you've undoubtedly overcooked the turkey on the outside, so you'll wind up with possibly an undercooked chicken on the interior, probably a really fatty duck in the middle, and then an overcooked dry turkey. Not good. Now, inspired by Kenji L. Lopez from Serious Eats and his water poaching method of sort of doing this one step at a time, cooking the chicken, getting it in the duck, cooking the duck, and then cooking the turkey afterwards, I've adapted that for a sous vide method, which works really well. Now, this is my third time making a turducken like this, but it has been several years, so hopefully this goes smoothly. Either way, come along for the ride. So step one here that I'm going to show you is actually boning out all the birds. I'm starting off here with my chicken. This was actually a frozen chicken that I purchased. This one's coming in at 4 pounds. All right, I have removed my chicken from that packaging and I'm just patting it dry here with a paper towel. So step one here, boning out these birds. And by the way, if you know how to bone a bird or you just want to sort of do it on your own, by all means, feel free to skip past this part here. I'm removing the tips. I'm even taking off like the split part here. We're just going to leave the super mini drumstick style bones here. So just using this is a really, really fun tool for this. Is a semi-flex boning knife. And I'm just cutting in here like that to expose that joint. I'm popping it and then getting the knife in that joint just like that. And whoop! This, now while this might seem like a little bit of a waste, you are going to want to save these so that you can make a gravy because we were not going to be catching drippings or anything like that when we're cooking these. So that is why we want to be able to do that. The next step here is getting the wishbone out. And that is just at the front end here of the chicken. And I'm going to take my knife and you can feel where it is and just come down to it and just run your knife along that bone nice and carefully. Getting the one side of it, and then you want to sort of tuck on the underside. And expose it. I just broke the wishbone. Here's the one part of it that was sort of unintentional. I was going to leave that intact. Kids could play with it later. But either way, once you've peeled that meat away on either side, it really does just pop out. And that is something else that you could also throw in order to make gravy. Next here, we want to flip it up so we've got the back. I'm just going to cut right down along it. You want to go nice and hard, make sure that you get through the skin like that. So now we want to remove this wing. So I'm going to flip it up and I'm going to just expose carefully with the knife. We don't need to do a lot of cutting here with this process. But we do need to expose that ball joint that's right here. And then just using the knife, you can just get right into that ball joint and separate those connective tissues that are in there. Oh, one other little piece. There we go. And so this wing is detached, going to do the same on the other side. And again, detached wings. So now we want to open up, still working on the back side of the bird, and just using your fingers, just kind of go in right along the rib cage. And we're peeling everything off here. I'm also getting into the little oysters here on the thighs. Now flipping over so that we've got the breasts here, I'm just going to again, using my fingers, tuck down, just separate everything here. The meat just comes right off. It can be helpful to use either a towel or some paper towel here just to hold on so you don't slip. Now, if you just grab it and you're just pulling, you might wind up leaving the tenderloins on here, which is okay because you can just peel them off. Either way, we're going to be placing them inside the finished boned chicken. And once you get down to the thigh, you can find the joint and you can just pop it out just like so. There's a chance, like right here, there is this ligament. I'm just gonna whoop, go like that, remove it. Same thing with the second one. Pop that joint, find the ligament, slice through it, and then that's free. Now we just keep pulling down. Right now this looks like a hot mess. But here we are. So we've got this complete rib cage here, a little mangled up. There's just a tiny little bit of meat on here. You can go ahead and remove that because we'll just be adding it to the chicken. And then you want to reserve this because, again, you could use that in a crock pot or a stock pot just to make some nice gravy. Now, I did wind up accidentally getting a little bit of the breastbone in here, so I'm going to quickly trim that out. Now, if this was my turkey, I would be done because with that, all we're doing is removing the rib cage. However, for the chicken and the duck, we still need to get the rest of this out. So the first step here is to get rid of the thigh bone. It's got this one single bone in here. So you can just run your knife right along it and you're just scraping the meat off of it. And if you wind up like, oops, oh, I have a little chunk of meat here, just remove it, set it aside, and we will be replacing that inside the chicken here momentarily. Once you get to here, you'll find that you've got this joint, which again, just a little fun knife action in there. We'll pop that off. Connective tissue and boom, bone, again, into the gravy pile. And to get out this drumstick, again, I'm going to just kind of cut along that bone. Now, I do want to take the little nubs off of here. I'm just going to use a cleaver and take those off. Actually, I'll do the other one too. Not this one flying at my feet. So if you don't have a boning knife like this, just use any sort of smaller knife that you're comfortable manipulating. It's something that you can get, something that's nice and sharp and you can just really get in along these bones and slide along them. There we are. See a little piece of meat on that. But it does have this ligament here. So again, just using my paper towel, I'm going to hold on to that. And we'll try to detach that meat from it. Just a tiny little bit of meat, but hey, every bite counts. And repeat with the other leg. And if you come across any little other ligaments, I mean, the drumsticks are notorious for that. You can just locate them and remove. And now we're down to just the wing bones left. So I'm just going to, using my knife, once again, slide right along that wing bone. Make sure it's largely disconnected from the meat, especially at the top where that joint was. And then repeat with the other side. And there we are, a boned out chicken, completely bone free. Now, the beautiful part about this and what should make it a little less daunting if you're like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna bone out this entire thing, is that if you do wind up accidentally kind of making a little bit of a mess here and there or whatever, or as I did, you wind up with some of these other pieces of meat, it's not a big deal. Once you've got the bones out here, you just wanna go ahead and make sure that any sort of other little connective tissue pieces, oh, and I've got a tiny little bit of that breastbone left. Speaking of making a mess of things, just make sure you've got any little bits of bone or tougher tissues out. Okay, that's looking nice and clean. And then you can take some of that meat and you just want to fill in any of the gaps so we've got a relatively even meat layer. Just like so. Now, if your stuffing and everything is already prepared and you want to go ahead and actually finish off this section, you can certainly do that. At this time though, I'm just going to fold mine up here. I'm going to set it aside and I'm going to bone out my other two birds. All right, I have my, well, no longer frozen duck right here. This is nearly 5 pounds. To be honest, I would have preferred either a slightly larger duck or a slightly smaller chicken, but it was the smallest chicken and the largest duck I could find at the store when I was there. I'll make it work one way or another. So now with boning out this duck, it's basically exactly the same as working with the chicken. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly do that. Again, starting with this wing. It is worth mentioning here with the duck that the wishbone is a little bit more of a pain in the butt. It's a little bit longer and just a little bit more intricate of a bone. It's not quite just the nice, small, V-shaped wishbone that you find in the chicken. But it comes out in a relatively similar fashion. So once that's done, again, we're going to go and remove this wing from the rib cage. I definitely found this duck to be a little bit weaker structurally than the chicken there, where the breastbone kind of was actually just kind of coming apart, so I did have to cut that out afterwards. But that's okay. Again, all of this is on the inside of the turducken and will not affect the appearance or the aesthetics of the finished product. So again, you just want to go through here and make sure that everything's really cleaned up. If there are any little chunks of ligaments or anything like that, you can get them out simply because none of that stuff's really going to break down while the birds are cooking. There we are. And again, I'm just going to fold this up, set it with my chicken, and then we're on to the turkey. And we're on to, I guess, the star of the show, if you will. This is a 14.5, well, almost 15-pound turkey, actually. Now, this is the easiest step. While we had to get all of the bones out of the chicken and out of the duck, All we're worried about here is the actual rib cage. We're going to be leaving the wings and the legs intact here, just so that when all is said and done from the outside, it will kind of look like a turkey. Well, it will look like a turkey. So that being said, there's a little bit less pressure on this because we're not worried about trying to keep everything looking super pretty while still removing all of those bones. Now, I have to get rid of that wishbone again here at the front end. It's a little bit trickier with the turkey because it seems like it's a little bit further in, but we'll make it happen. Whew, okay, I took a little bit more time with that because I was trying to prove that it is actually possible to remove one of these wishbones intact. And so, similarly to the other two, I'm going to just cut down the spine. It's a little bit harder here, just on that bottom end of the spine. Didn't want to just rip nicely. Also, some of the connective tissues here are obviously larger and a little bit stronger, so it does require perhaps a little bit more actual knife work in order to finesse this off. Am I allowed to use a word like finesse as I sit here struggling to peel the meat off of this poor turkey here? And so we come to the issue of the wings here. So it's just a matter of making sure to remove that joint. Or rather separate that joint, but it's just right in there. And it is nice because they are larger bones, so it's easier to identify what's going on here. And just remove that from the rib cage. And then do the same on the other side. At this point, it's really just getting your hands in there and letting your fingers sort of guide you along the rib cage in order to separate those breasts. And before we go any further, I'm going to want to get in here, and you can just find that joint where the thigh attaches. Just separate that. Ta-da! Okay, similarly to the duck, part of that, the one part of the breastbone is in here, so I am going to remove that. And then it's just a matter of cleaning up any ligaments or anything like that that you find still kicking around in here. Perfect, all done.
Stuffing time.
Like a full kilogram of bacon ends and a half kilo of ground boar. Getting a couple more animals in this fantastic turducken.
And along with that meat, I've also got an extra pound of ground turkey here that I'm just finishing frying up.
To that, I'm going to be adding all these veggies here. So this was a combination of celery, onion, carrot, mushrooms, all kinds of good stuff. You can really do any sort of stuffing that you want with this, provided that it's mainly meat.
And the idea there is that you're going to be able to help retain the shape. If you go with a bread-heavy stuffing, which is sort of traditional in turkey meals, it's going to wind up kind of schlumping down and just losing its shape and not being able to hold its structure. So this also means you get a whole lot extra meat, which is fantastic. And I've gone ahead and added my bacon and boar back into this here. I'm just going to let everything get nicely mixed up, and then we are ready to actually start to stuff our chicken. So I have my beautiful little chicken layer here laid out. I do have this running across three strands of butcher's twine, and just in the spirit of making a nice even meat layer, I'm going to partially butterfly the breast here, both of them, and that's going to help everything cook really evenly. Just kind of eyeballing it a bit. Then I can take any of the leftover little pieces of chicken that were around there. And now we have this nice, even meat mat. Now we need to season this, so we're just going to get some kosher salt and some fresh cracked pepper. It will magically appear on my chicken here. And there we go, beautiful. Now it's time for the stuffing. We're just going to put it right in the middle. I am adding this layer hot just because the whole concept behind this turducken is warm inside the cold and repeat, and it will help this first layer cook a little bit more. Yeah, we can add some more here because this is the sort of the thickest layer of stuffing that we'll wind up having. Probably just one little bit more. It wouldn't be a This Dad Goes to 11 project if we didn't try to fly too close to the sun with overstuffing things. So now I'm just going to fold up like so. And using these strings, which as I can see I cut way too long, we're just going to tie this to help it hold its shape just to get into the vacuum sealed bag here so that we can go into the sous vide. Okay. I'm not worried about any sort of fancy knots or anything like that because this is all going to be coming off after this first cooking process. We'll just cut off the extra string. And let's get this into the vacuum bag. All right, taking my little meat baby here. I'm going to slide it right on in, like that. And now we will very carefully vacuum seal it. And here we are. Of note would be the fact that I did a double seal on both ends here, just to make sure that nothing pops. I'm just going to get it into the water bath. A couple of my handy little clips here. Just hold it in place. And we've got this at 145 Fahrenheit, which would be a really good temperature here for it, just to cook, but not overcook. And yeah, here we go. And I'm hitting the end of 2 hours here for the sous vide for that chicken. So it's time to prep up my duck. Now, this does have this large extra piece of skin here, which I'm going to utilize because of this little split that I've got in the skin there. So I'm just going to face the skin the same direction here. Tuck it underneath. Easier said than done. And then I'm going to roll it up. And then just going through that gap, making sure that it is covering any bit of that little slit in that skin. Now I do want to butterfly these breasts just a little bit here. Again, trying to create a relatively even layer of meat. We'll do both of these. Looking good. One little chunk of extra meat there. Perfect. All right, so let us now get this seasoned up. So use some, again, fresh cracked pepper. And some kosher salt. We're gonna need some more kosher salt. my fantastic assistant over here. Delightful. Okay, and now time for some more stuffing. This has cooled down to room temperature. Yeah, we're just going to put it right in the middle here. Beautiful. Okay, that is good. Now, I'm going to get my duck out of the water, or my chicken out of the water bath and pat it dry with a paper towel, and then it'll be ready to go onto here. And here is my chicken. The other thing I did too was remove those strings that were sort of trussing it up there. Just going to nestle it right inside here. Now, we're going to see why I wish I had a slightly smaller chicken or a slightly larger duck. The difficulty here, keeping it together. Ooh, don't lose any of that stuffing. Again, just doing an initial little tie. And then, you know what? I'm going to have my lovely assistant do a knot on this for me. Yeah, so just pull this tight. Yeah, well, that's very tight. Now do a knot. Perfect. Yes, your hands are now filthy. Okay. I'll tie this one. And I'm going to have you give me a hand with this final one here too, just so I can hold it together as tightly as possible. Yep, perfect. Awesome. So you can see there's the tiniest of gaps running across here. That will be a-okay though. All right, and we've got our sous vide bag. We're going to hold it open and just taking care not to touch the bag onto the dirty cutting board surface. Delightful. Okay, we're gonna get that vacuum sealed up. So here we are. You can also see I did take one whole lemon. I cut it into quarters and put 1/4 in each of the 4 corners of this bag. I figured just a little citrus burst would be sort of nice with this, especially with that higher fat content with the duck. But we're also gonna deal with that in another way here in a little bit. But for now, back in to the water bath at that 145 and let that sit for a couple of hours. Now after 2 hours, I've taken the duck, I have popped it out of its sous vide bag, I have patted it dry with some paper towel. I'm just removing this twine. And now, as promised, it's time to deal with that skin. So behind me, I've got my 16-inch skillet, cast iron skillet, hot. We're gonna go and roll this around here a little bit. Now the goal here is to let some of the fat inside this skin render out and also to crisp up the skin. So it'll just take several minutes here. I'm officially regretting having removed the twine so early. I probably should have left it on for this part. Would have made it a little bit less sketchy, but that's okay. We're rendering out drippings and even a little bit of this stuffing. If it pops out, that's totally fine. It's all going to be added to the other stuffing that we'll be serving with the turducken. So here we are. Duck is basically done and just waiting to be entered into the turkey. So it is time once again to season the meat. And our salt and pepper, and then we're going to add our stuffing. Try to work around our camera situation here. Put a bunch of this on here, and anything that we can fit into this, we will add to our bread stuffing that we have roasting in the oven. Down here. Huh. We did it! All right, now the super fun part, getting this duck onto here. Bringing it around and rolling the duck right like so. Now, if you had a smaller turkey that wouldn't quite accommodate the length of this, you would just want to trim a little bit of that excess off if you're wanting to make it look like the entire thing is in fact a turkey.
So I've got some twine here ready to go. The one that's closest to the camera, I have coming along the top and then coming underneath the wings, so it's in the crevice. I have one right at the top end of the drumsticks here and the thighs, and then one tucking on the back side of that drumstick on each side. Now the tricky part here, this is where I'm going to need, again, second set of hands, is you want to overlap that skin. Tie it, and then we will repeat with the others here. We also want to run one lengthwise, help contain everything here. All right, we've got it all trussed up. We managed to get some twine up around the bottom of these drumsticks. And now I'm just rubbing on some olive oil. And once it's coated with that, ooh, we're getting some salt and pepper on the exterior here as well. Well, it's mostly like a turkey, I'd say. Good enough. All right, time to get this in the oven. With the oven at 425, this is going to roast up. The beautiful thing is we're just trying to cook the outer layer with that turkey, so it doesn't take that long. We just pulled it after an hour and 45. We're gonna let this sit here for about 15 or 20 minutes just to rest. So at this point you want to remove they pull right off the legs.
Actually, I had this conversation
And the wings.
So they have
They're not attached to anything.
I was talking about my Slack, I can get out. Absolutely, I like step back. And I, like my lender brain exploded because I was like thinking about. Okay.
Ooh,
About that one. That one makes sense.
right there. So once again, I find myself relegated to the basement, where it's far less chaotic. Okay, so that was a bite of turkey, which in your traditional store-bought turducken is the driest, nastiest thing you can possibly eat, and was super moist. The stuffing, I mean, it's meat. It's delicious, it's rich. Not over the top though. We got some duck. That skin nicely rendered down. And go for some more stuffing. Then you get a little piece of chicken. Huh? I can hardly do this on camera. It's not mushy. It's not undercooked. It's beautiful. It's firm and yet moist. It's everything it should be. Every single animal in this particular meal has been done due justice. It's delicious. A little bit of that citrus in there with the duck. Fantastic call, me. Amazing. I didn't even bother with any of the potatoes or anything yet. I'm just going to have an entire platter of meat and then go back and get that. So, yeah, is it a lot of work? Absolutely. Is it like fun and impressive and a little gitchy? Yep, for sure. And that really makes it worth it. It's a great excuse to have a bunch of people over. I mean, this is like what, like 26, 27 pounds of meat in the world's most ridiculous meatloaf. I can't recommend this enough. Just got to play with your knife skills a little bit. Do all the prep work. Do it up. Day of the cook, though, it's really nice because you only have that, you know, those 2-hour windows where not a lot's going on because things are just cooking with the precision cooker. You could try and do that with like a poach hot water bath just on the stove top. Be a little nervous though about the hot bottom of the pot there. You need a little bit of a rack in it, but could theoretically be done. But you have got to try this. If you have the equipment to do it, the time, the patience, and the serious lust for all that meat, it's 100% recommended. So until next time, keep your holiday, I mean, even a Tuesday night, keep all of that stuff at 11.